Hey, what's up, everyone? I have a statement for you. Semi-automatic pistols are way better for self-defense than revolvers. Right? I'm not so sure. Now, to a lot of people, semi-autos are the much newer technology, and they have a lot of pluses going for them. For example, they have a narrower profile than some of your revolvers because of the way that cylinder pops out. And of course, the big thing is capacity. You can have some semi-autos that have 15 rounds, 17, 20 rounds. If you get something smaller like a 5.7 or, God help you, if you do a PMR 30, you can put 30 rounds of ammunition in them. This one only holds 7, which is, I guess, high capacity for a revolver. This one holds 5. And of course, there are a whole bunch that hold 6. So that would seem to mean that the revolver is kind of the loser of the bunch. Well, not exactly. I've always had an affinity for revolvers because I tend to like things that kind of slow down my shooting experience when I go to the range. And even though sometimes I'd go with 20-round magazines when they were legal in my tyrannical state, I'd probably just load 5 of them in there just to kind of practice loading, reloading 5 rounds, and I'd focus more than if I just loaded them up to 20. So I felt like I was it's weird, like kind of moving more and shooting more than if I was just putting 5 because I was doing the loading and the reloading. That's just me. But now that I'm limited to 10 rounds, it kind of makes me think things a little bit differently. Especially, like, say, in certain situations, like, home defense, or even just when you're going out. And like I said, I'm not trying to change minds with this video. I'm just kind of giving you a little food for thought. Feel free to sample it, digest it, then think what you may. But let's say you have a semi-auto pistol. One of the great things about a semi-auto is, let's think of a rifle for a second. Semi-auto, you fire a round, next one's ready. Bolt action, fire a round, then you have to kind of work the action again. Well, in that regard, revolvers and semi-autos are kind of the same. You fire a round and the next one's ready for you. Of course, the difference is you don't have a magazine in a revolver, so unless you're skilled and practiced, it could take you a lot longer than putting a magazine in. Now, if you do practice a lot and you're pretty skilled, you can pretty much make that difference in, popping a speed loader in the cylinder versus someone else using a magazine. You can make that time difference negligible, again, if you practice and you're skilled at it. But there's a lot of pluses for revolvers. I think one big one is the types of rounds you can put in revolvers. Now, in front of you, I have two 357 Magnum revolvers. Now, the good thing is you can put 357 Magnum, and you can also use 38 Special and 38 Plus P. Yeah, basically, with the semi-auto, you're kind of stuck on 9. If you have a 9mm, I mean, or if you have a 10mm. So let's say you have a 40 Smith & Wesson, you're kind of stuck with 40. These you can shoot the 2 calibers, so if we have a time when ammunition isn't very plentiful, gee, couldn't imagine that happening, then you have the option of 2 potential calibers you can shoot. The big thing that got me thinking about this whole thing, though, was the disparity between 357 Magnum and 9mm. Because, let's face it, without doing the research on it, I feel pretty safe in saying that the most popular self-defense caliber in the United States is probably 9mm. And I think that not only is it the most popular, again, from anecdotal information and what I read, but it's probably the most popular by quite a margin. Now, with your typical 9mm, I think, again, around 375, 380 foot-pounds of energy. I mean, it's good enough for, for the police, and it's good enough for NATO and whatnot, so it's good enough for self-defense, right? Yeah, I'd say so. And putting 20 rounds into your pistol of 9mm, that's fantastic. Now, when you're going to be limited to 10, though, that kind of gets me thinking. Now, if you read different studies and articles and whatnot, if they are to be believed, most times when you're using a firearm in self-defense, you're using 3 or 4 rounds. Okay? Most of the time, or less. So you're really not going to need 20 rounds of usually. I mean, you could be that, 1 in a million where 20 rounds might be necessary, but I mean, most of the time, you're not going to use your handgun. If you do use the handgun, the presentation might diffuse the situation, and if it does have to be used, probably 3 or 4 might get the job done. In that case, 5, 7, and plenty with 6. Now, that has me thinking. If you're going to limit yourself into the number of rounds you're carrying, because let's say, for example, you live in a tyrannical state like I do, where they ignore the Constitution and are illogical, but I digress, and you're limited to the number of rounds you carry, it's probably better to carry 10 rounds of 9mm than 7 rounds of 9mm. I think we all agree that the caliber's the same, more rounds the merrier, right? But now what if you're not carrying the same caliber? What if you are carrying a different caliber, and one of them, the 9mm, gets 370, 380 foot-pounds of energy, but the 357 Magnum gets substantially more? So before I came on, just to make sure I wasn't going crazy, I went to the Underwood Ammo site, and I would basically encourage any of you to do the same Google search. Google Underwood Ammo 357, and what will happen is you'll see a bunch of product pages, and they will tell you all about the designs of individual bullet types they have and the casings, and they'll tell you the velocity of the rounds and the grain weight, and they will also tell you the foot-pounds of energy. Well, like I said, a lot of 9mm, they're around like 380 foot-pounds of energy. Some a little less, some a little more, especially if you're dealing with plus P and whatnot. Well, 357, the 3 that I looked at were between 747 and 790 foot-pounds of energy. Now, that's roughly twice what a typical 9mm is. So, while you're not going to have as many opportunities to pull that trigger if need be, when they hit, they're really going to count for more probably than the 9mm did. As far as stopping power and, stopping the threat, yeah, you'd probably get more done with the 9mm. Excuse me, with the 357. And, the other thing to think about is if you are in some type of a citizen-involved shooting, and I don't know this, I'm just kind of guessing out loud, but I got to wonder if it would look better for you to a jury if you fired 1 or 2 shots versus 4 or 5. And if you used, a revolver, which is, kind of this old-fashioned thing that kind of only old guys use. It's not one of those scary assault weapons. So it could make a difference. Now, to really go off here, what about a 44 Magnum? There's also the 41 Magnum. We'll leave that too. But what about a 44 Magnum? 44 Magnum, type in Underwood Ammo, 44 Magnum. I actually saw some that were in 1,100 to 1,200 foot-pounds of energy. Now, 357 typically is used in a revolver. I don't know what barrel length they used in those studies to get the velocity in foot-pounds they did, whether it was a 6-inch revolver, an 8-inch revolver. Maybe they fired it out of an 18-inch barrel in a lever action. I don't know. So just keep that in mind. But with the 44 Magnum, I looked at it specifically, and they had 2 of them that were 1,100 to 1,200 foot-pounds of energy, which is kind of more than 3 times your typical 9mm. One of them was actually, I believe, 1,530 foot-pounds of energy. Again, is that out of a 24-inch single-shot rifle? Or is it out of a 5-inch or 6-inch revolver? I don't know. But I think it's worth considering that if you're going to have your capacity limited to 10 rounds, maybe 10 rounds of something more potent is better than 10 rounds of something less potent. Just a little food for thought. Digest it. And I will talk to you guys later. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, because it's kind of like your way of voting for me, and tell me what kind of things you like talking about. Because the purpose of this isn't to try and convince you to run out and get a revolver or anything, just to kind of think about things. So I hope I did that and I accomplished that. Talk to you later.